Welcome to episode 5 here on Coach 'em Up. I'm Travis Turner, joined by my good friend, my longtime friend, my friend of nearly 50 years, Ed Chapman. Bless your heart for hanging in there so long. And can you believe Coach 'em Up is already 5 episodes old?
Right. Yeah. It's as old as we were when we met each other, right?
That's right. And lo, these many years, here we go, chronicling for everybody all of the mistakes that we have made. And this episode here is really going to hit home, hopefully hit home in a good way for people that are dealing with it or going to be dealing with it. It certainly is going to be a trip to the confessional for us in a lot of ways. But coaching your children, in our case, sons, but coaching your children, and obviously we have to acknowledge the different dynamic that would be coaching girls or coaching young women. Ed and I both have only had boys to coach, young men to coach, and so we'll be speaking specifically to that experience. But our title for this one comes from a song first by Jim Croce. Our man Jerry Reed covered it, Ed. I sent you that cover. Jerry did a pretty good job with it, but it's called The Hard Way Every Time. And it is a song, the lyrics talk about having good intentions, but making a lot of mistakes. And we certainly can speak to that. I don't know that I have ever done anything that I would regard as more challenging, more humbling, or anything that I have screwed up more than coaching my son.
Yeah. Yeah, I hear you. And I mean the truth of those lyrics of that song, which by the way, you pull any Jim Croce stuff and you might have to grab a Kleenex, but
We're getting serious, no question.
I mean, why is I mean it's this, self-reflection that says I have to learn it the hard way every time, right? I mean, I can't ever just learn it outright and catch it on the front side and do it correctly. I have to do it wrong before I ever can see even the slightest error of my ways and make the adjustment. But I mean, that's parenting in general, of course. But then you add the competitive, performance-based layers that go into whatever level of athletics that you encounter with your child, and when you're trying to coach them, or even just being a super involved parent who wants to not necessarily coach the whole team, but who wants to do right by their child and develop them as an athlete. Um, you know, Obviously, I found that it was impossible for me to be the dad coach duo from outside the fence or up in the bleachers. So I decided that I just preferred to go ahead and be in the battle, in the mix with them on a daily basis, and and let the chips fall where they may. And certainly, I made a mess of things plenty of times.
Well, it's so tough, and it's always been tough. But I'm gonna give a couple of different perspectives, and let me say this: there has always been the father in particular who has been living through their child. That's probably been around as long as there have been fathers and sons. Uh,
Yeah, before we had sports, right?
that's right. That's right. It could have been in anything, but that's you're passing on a name in many cases. You're certainly passing on a last name, but sometimes it's junior. I mean,
Right.
you're passing on a name, you're passing on a reputation. You will honor me and you will honor us. And that, again, is older than sports. And so that's at the root of it. And, I was very fortunate. And I think you and I were both very fortunate to have come from an era where nothing was quite as important as it is now. And we live in an era now, and I was guilty of it. I'm going to raise my hand right now of trying to engineer the perfect player, the college player, potentially the pro, trying to build that from ground one. We've talked a little bit in previous episodes about our backgrounds and the fact that we both came from families attached to agribusiness. And certainly our fathers were men of the country, they grew up in this area uh, where ball was not always prominent in their lives. For your dad, not much at all. My dad was a very serious baseball player, but my dad was also a hunter. He was also a fisherman, and he also lived with the reality that his dad didn't think ball was something that should get a lot of your time. And so while my father was a great teacher of the game, he had a great love of the game, he passed that on to me. For whatever reason, it never occurred to my dad to try to engineer a guy who wanted to be a pro. Now that's who I became. But it was mine. It was mine, and all of the lunatic tendencies that I had as a player and as a competitor, my father was not responsible for those in any way. He did not put that on me. I know for you, your dad simply let you be because work for him was too important. Not that he didn't love you, not that he didn't support you, but it wasn't a big deal to him in the way that it became to you. And so for you, again, it was just sort of very organic in terms of your finding your way. So got to say out of hand, we didn't grow up with, and my dad did coach me. He coached us. He coached a lot of kids, and he was tremendous at it. But again, he wasn't trying to engineer anything bigger than a group of kids playing some ball.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And so, again, we, our backgrounds are similar, yet a little bit different. Like you said, your dad had been more of an athlete. You then also had higher skill levels than I did growing up, and you were able to compete at a higher level and went on to play college and pursued pro aspirations. Whereas it was always very obvious to me what my limitations were, and being able to play any level of high school, anything was the ceiling for me. And that turned out to be true in the next generation with our children as well. But we didn't come from somebody who had, I don't even know. I guess there were the very rare sports dads in our growing up days.
Yeah, there were some.
There were the maniacal ones who had often a lack of perspective, right? Who were trying to engineer something, but it became that much more widespread along the way. I'm not sure exactly. I don't know that there's any point in trying to figure out when, where, or why it became the thing for our generation. Honestly, for the guys that are currently in their 50s and 60s, we were trying to make, I guess because it was expected everybody would go to college. College was really expensive. So a great way to get your college paid for would be to be a good enough athlete to get a college scholarship. And the glory of being at least even a college athlete was something that had become, even bigger through the 70s and 80s, and the popularity of sports and the growth of media and so forth. And so it just sort of became natural that, hey, that which we might have wanted to pursue ourselves, we'll certainly try to create that for them. And then, standing and waiting in line for all of our money were the people that were going to put on the various tournaments and provide all of those opportunities to chase those dreams, right? And then you suddenly have to ask yourself, is it my dream or is it my child's dream?
And that's a question that absolutely has to be asked. And one thing that I will say that, and I'll have to walk a fine line here, we are going to need to do an episode addressing travel sports, showcase sports, that is specifically directed at parents, even those who don't coach. This episode is, again, about fathers coaching our sons, so we'll try to keep it its level. Well, first on the recreational level, then on the travel level, then within the school systems. You want to talk about some dum-dums here? You're looking at two of them, the tough spots that we have put ourselves in, and remember, somebody has to coach our young people. And at the recreational and at the very small youth level, it's dads. It's always going to be dads. So it's so important that we have people who serve in that way. So to every father who has given time to their child and to others, we salute you. You're doing something that is very, very important. Of course, it's critical that when we're doing that we do right by all of those other children, and perhaps the biggest reminder, our own. And again, you want to talk about the influence and the power you have. It is just almost indescribable, because remember, our kids are wired to look at us as their heroes, as all knowing, as always going to do the right thing for them. And how that can turn as we go through youth into adolescence and to being young men, young women, even on that side of it, holy cow, you want to talk about a minefield where the missteps can be so big and they can happen so fast, and you just have to be so very careful. So I think number one, as Ed just said, the critical component is this has to be your child's choice. It has to be their journey. And then you have to handle their journey with care, with this idea that you are going to do right by them as your child first, as a person first, and then as an athlete second. Of course, there's all the stuff, because as soon as a dad's coaching, you get the chirping of, oh, it's daddy ball. He's favoring his kid, or a couple of dads are favoring their kids. And look, that happens. And I will tell you guys out of hand that the first thing I did to take care of that, especially as a high school coach, was I treated my son like crap. I made sure that everybody knew that there was going to be no favoritism, that my child was going to get it worse, first, last, always, and twice on a Friday. Make no mistake, I've coached a long time. I've run a lot of practices. Only one player in history has ever been thrown out of my practices. That's my child multiple times. And here's the thing about my son, and Coach Chapman has coached him. My son is one of the best people you'll ever know. He has so very few of the qualities that made me a lunatic. He's just a great kid, a great teammate, and has carried the burden of me with him. And, Ed knows this, and I was always trying to help my son get to where he wanted to go. And I do believe he wanted to go there. But you just have to be careful with the push. And our children are children too, Ed. And I think maybe once we start out, that's the most important thing to remember. They deserve to be a kid and to love it and enjoy it like a kid and be unburdened from the pressure, because no 8, 9, 10, 11-year-old needs to deal with that.
Right. Yeah. Nobody is sinking their future prospects at ages 7 to 12 or 13, 14 even. Clearly there are steps. If they say they have a goal, there are steps that they will need to be encouraged and pointed toward, and may even need a little bit of assistance climbing those steps. But it needs to be their choice, and it needs to be there needs to have been developed an opportunity for them to love the game and to love their teammates and to love then at some point the work that goes into it. And it's like I said, it's difficult because it starts with, it's literally being a father, which is a hard enough job. And then it moves to, okay, I have to also be his coach. And you know what? I had the chance to coach 2 of my sons in various sports, and they were remarkably different right out of the gate. My oldest son tagged along, went everywhere, wanted everything to do with everything related to every kind of ball from the get-go. It was easy. He wanted it. He desired it. He asked, he was curious about it in the same way that other kids are curious about 1,000 other things. That was his thing that he enjoyed learning about. His younger brother did not come down that road. He took long and winding roads to eventually involve himself more seriously in sports. And it was a constant struggle within me to parent and coach them accordingly. And so that was, if you have 2 children involved or more, That would be my encouragement: is don't don't lose sight of the individual, and see to it that you address them individually, and then present opportunities to them to work, to grow, to develop, if that's what they want to do. But when they have to be made to do it, there's going to reach a point time wears on. If that is constantly pressed upon them, not only will you get diminishing returns, now you set yourself up for potential resentment. And so it has to be their dream. It has to be their work. It has to be their work ethic at some point as well.
Yeah. And it's, guys, I'm going to tell you right now, going back to this idea of engineering the best ball player you can. It is a wonderful thing to give them every resource they might need, to put them in every position that they can. But understand a couple of things right out of hand. And this is for parents, period. But also you understand that if a father is coaching, he probably likes the game a lot. He's probably pretty serious about this. Number one, your son's performance is not a reflection of you. And if they're great, you don't need to be too proud. If they're not great, you don't need to be embarrassed or ashamed. Your child is your child. That's what always takes precedence. That's always what is most important, regardless of their higher power will tell you, if your child is fortunate enough to be in position to be that rare thing, a professional, and if your child is in position to be that still rare thing, not as rare as a pro, but be a college athlete, that's a rare thing. There's a lot of opportunities, but it's still a rare thing. That is something that has been ordained and has been granted through gifts given from a higher power. There is nothing you are doing that is going to make that happen. Now, you can help assist it happen, but if they don't have the aptitude, which is the God-given ability to do it well enough, and the attitude that is in them. Now, you can foster that, you can help that, but we can't make anybody be a pro or a college player. And just like we don't get credit for it, you're also not at fault if they can't.
Right. And I mean, that was the hardest lesson that I learned the earliest in my coaching career. The first time I had my own team was of me. It says you can't coach, when I knew good and well I could coach. Well, whatever emotions that you feel as a coach when your team can't perform and how it makes you feel inadequate as a coach, when your child is involved, that will be multiplied immeasurably.
Yep.
You will be tempted to feel that on a level that you've never felt before when your child is the one who cannot perform. It will, like you said, you will feel like it says something about you as a parent, you as a coach, as somebody who is supposed to know ball, or somebody who once played ball and claims to know what they're doing. You will often immediately transfer their performance onto you. And that's not accurate. You don't do that. An experienced coach, one who has learned some perspective, they don't do that. They don't let their whole team do that to them. They don't let any one player do that to them. And so you certainly shouldn't do it with your child. Now, it's reasonable to expect hard work out of them. It's reasonable to expect that they will give good effort, that they will learn to be a great teammate, and that they will actually do the things that they say they want to do. And so it's important to communicate and find out, how badly do they want it? What do they want out of this? And then when you see that their actions don't match their words, that's the same thing you would do as a parent. When you see that the actions they say, or the actions that they give, don't match the words that they say, you would just point out, okay, now there's an inconsistency here. would you like to adjust what you really believe? Would you like to say something different now because not willing to work at it if they don't want to practice at it? Then you have to say, okay, well, we have to adjust what we're saying. And then you as the parent can't just say, well, you said you wanted it. Well, actually, I wanted you to want it. So you repeated and you parroted what I said that I wanted for you. But now I'm seeing that the attitudes and the actions don't match that. We've got to address this inconsistency. And, that's one of the things that becomes very complicated in the parental relationship, is acknowledging the fact that, hey, we can't let this sport or the performance in this sport come between us as parent child.
Right. Well, and it's got to be clear that the child has to know you don't have to get 2 hits, you don't have to score 15 points for me to love you. That's guaranteed. And I think that's the thing that you just have to keep saying to your son in this situation is, look, I love you no matter what. No matter what. I don't care if you hit 050 or you hit 450, you score 12 points, you score none. I love you for who you are as my child and as a human being, and you matter. And that has, because this idea of trying to avoid being transactional with other people's kids, we can't do that with anybody. We want to be transformational, but it's so dangerous. It's so easy to fall into that trap because it's not even what we mean. That's one thing that I learned about my relationship with my son, because he does not communicate easily and he takes everything in. When I was his age, if somebody handled me the way that I sometimes handled them, they would have got it back, wouldn't they? I would have let him know. I mean, I'm going to let you know. And he just took it in. And even though my intent was to make him a better version of himself, that's not how it felt to him. I'll never forget it. He's in 8th grade, and he's on the verge of starting for us in varsity baseball, playing every game as an 8th grader, and deservedly so on our roster. But it's the winter before our spring season on the varsity, and he and I are driving through town, and he's getting a lecture, and he's upset, and I realize that he's upset. And I can tell from some of the things he's saying that he doesn't believe that I hold him in esteem as a player. And I said, I just told you, you're going to be starting every day on varsity as an 8th grader. I said, do you not believe that I think you're good? And through tears, he said, no. And I said, honey, I think you're terrific. What I'm trying to tell you is you're not good enough. We've got to keep getting better. But it didn't matter what I knew my intent was. He couldn't feel it. He felt nothing but that he was being judged and that he was failing me and that he was disappointing me. And that alone was killing him. And so from that point, of course, now you want to talk about being ashamed. Now you are. And it becomes then this understanding that you have to be very clear, not only to convey what you do mean, but also to make sure that they understand what you mean. And if there's disconnect there, you got to fix it.
Right. And now I'll tie it back around. Perhaps the words that you say and the goals that you say you have, your work and your attitude's not matching that. Okay, well, then you also, as the parent coach, have to look in the mirror and say, what about me? Are the things that I'm doing and the attitude that I'm projecting to them, does it actually match what I said when I said that I love you no matter what? I'm proud of you. How you perform as an athlete does not impact my affection for you and my constant love and devotion to you. But if what I'm saying or the attitude that I'm saying it with projects something different, I've got to be alert to that. I've got to be able to pick up on that. And again, I had 2 sons that they played up through high school, but when they were younger, the oldest son wanted my approval, and he always wanted my feedback. And he had a hard time performing if I wasn't there. You know, there was the time they played on a Sunday and I was not able to go, and you know, he didn't pitch particularly well, and one of the other coaches said, "Look, he just can't do it if you're not there. He looks for you for that. You are the calming influence to him." Well, in that same era, within another couple of years, our youngest son always wanted his mom to go to the travel tournaments, and he he could perform. He felt pressure just in my presence because I was the guy who would give feedback that he didn't want. It was feedback that he didn't desire and didn't want at that point. And mom couldn't critique anything. She was just there and happy and had a Gatorade and took pictures. And dad represented a threat to his enjoyment. And so you really have to get to know your kids and figure out where they're coming from. And as Brad Burns told you, look, you're not coaching you. Yep. And so that which makes sense to you in terms of how you would handle this and what you think that person needs in terms of coaching / parenting, man, it's totally different. It can be totally different from what would work for you. And it can even be different among your own children.
Well, and that's something, you know, Ed, as I tried to hammer out the areas that I felt like, you know, my son had to have change, that he needed to be transformed in some ways. You know, giving people what they need is important. We've talked about that. Episode 2, you know, address that. But if you can't do that within the framework of understanding the person, then there is a real chance that you are breaking that person. But more importantly, going back to the father-son thing, you are breaking that relationship, whether you intend to or not. That doesn't matter. Again, what your intent is, as you've said, it is the walk over the words, and it is the consistency of this idea that if you're trying to tell this person, I love you and I believe in you and I support you, then your actions have to match it. And again, I say this understanding now, having chosen the hard way every time. There is lyrics in that song that says they tried to tell me and I didn't listen. I didn't hear. And so, you know, we hope as we go through some of this for dads who are coaching their sons, that you will listen, that you will hear it, and that you will understand. Again, you know, Ed said it back in episode 4 that we recorded just a few minutes ago. It's about loving the person. It's certainly, when it's your child, it has to be about loving them. And you have this great opportunity to share something, this connection through baseball, basketball, golf, whatever it may be, football, whatever it may be, soccer. You have this ability to be connected with your child forever beyond their playing career. But you can't have any connection if you ruin the relationship. And at some point, you have to step back and you have to say, what is it I'm angry about? A game, a sport?
Right.
I'm a fool.
I mean, it is just it's a very difficult perspective to have, especially depending on how you are wired and how your child is wired. You know, sometimes, you know, the providence of God steps in and teaches you the lesson that you needed to learn. I can say that from my perspective, because our oldest child was diagnosed with leukemia coming out of 6th grade, and everything changed because he got the sport taken away. He got the sports that he loved to play taken away from him for most of 3 years. And then whatever he was able to achieve after that was gravy. I can't tell you that I would have had the proper perspective of his career if that had never happened.
Right.
I would have wanted, because you want your child to be good enough. You want your child to be one of the better ones and maybe get that scholarship or whatever. And I had that desire for him because he was a smart kid, not a terribly talented athletically kid because he's got my genetics, but he was a kid that if there was a way to grind out a higher level of performance, he might have I thought maybe he could do that. And when it got taken away from him and I got to see from that perspective, oh, wow. Hey, get over yourself, man. And then he went back to being able to play and to enjoy the sports to the highest degree that he could. And he loved being a teammate. He loved trying to be a leader. He loved working with the guys and being part of a team. And I don't know how soon that true perspective would have settled in on me. I got it slapped in my face.
Right.
And then it even allowed me to tell, to work with my younger son, who mostly tried to focus on basketball. I was able to say to him, look, you'll get results when you decide that you want to work hard enough at it, but I'm not going to force you to do it. And my wife even would say, you need to make him go to the gym. He needs to put in some extra time, right? And I go, not until he wants to.
Right.
Not until it was his thing. And you know what? It was finally his thing between his junior and senior year. He was tired of the lack of success and put in the effort, and he was able to have a more successful senior season because of the work that he put in, and that changed his view going forward as well. And hopefully he'll be able to teach that as well. You never know what lessons that you'll need to learn, but we do it the hard way every time. And, sometimes it is some massive shift in perspective that has to hit us first. And you hope that it's not something that rocks the relationship and causes your child to have to have hatred toward the sport. And certainly you don't want there to be some sort of ongoing disconnect between you and them, because no sport is worth that.
No, absolutely not. And there's no level of success that is worth that. You hope that it's a lifetime relationship that you have with your children, and the sport, of course, can be a part of your life for a long time. But as a player, it ends for everybody at some point, no matter how preposterously talented they might be. And I think to take what Ed said, we have to let our kids lead us as far as what they want to do. Again, show us with their action. One of the things that probably saved my relationship with my son while we were going through it was we had a hard and fast rule, even then, that the game stayed at the field. It stayed there. And that was we never discussed it. We did not take it home. And our relationship as father and son, separate from the game, was in fact separate. And I think you have to have those boundaries. You have to have those rules. But I think sometimes we think that, we can just get away with more. We can be harder on our kids. And again, me, I believe in that. I believe in discipline. I believe in demanding the very best. But we can't forget that loving and caring for our child is job one. And it shouldn't be about, removing obstacles. They need adversity. They need to learn to struggle. They need to learn to get through things. That's where we show them. And I'm dealing with my son with this in his college career now, as he's having some struggles. I told him the other day, I said, look, I would love for you to hit 400. I said, but I won't be more proud of you for that than I will be if you just keep fighting through your struggles, no matter what the result is. I just want you to learn to trust yourself, to rely on yourself, to find out what's in you, and to put your identity in the important things in your life. Let this be your passion. Let this be your joy. But if you will just keep battling, even if the end result's not what we want, I'm proud of you because you're resilient, because you're tough, because you're still a good teammate. You're still selfless no matter how things are going for you. I said, that's what matters. That's what we're doing here ultimately, because whether you were 2 for 3 or 0 for 3, whether your team won 20 games or lost 20 games in 50 years, your impact in the world is not that.
That's right.
And that's our job, certainly as coaches, but absolutely as parents. That can't be lost in this journey.
Yeah. I mean, we really are, from our perspective, we're talking about dads and their sons. We're trying to develop tougher, resilient, character-based young men, right? And sports is a beautiful tool for that. And in navigating the who has a connection to all the players on the team. And then there is that one specific player that has that unique bond that can feel both good or bad, right? And
that's right.
These
are amplified.
These are the hurdles of life, though, right? I mean, this is life. There will be complex relationships. There will be those that require a different level of dexterity to be able to manage well, right? Not every relationship is going to be the same. And so they need to see us. They need to see our vulnerabilities. They need to see our strength. They need to see our character when it's tested. When we fail the test, we need to acknowledge that we failed certain tests. We need to ask for forgiveness, give forgiveness. All those things have to be part of the whole equation. And there has to be, as we've said before, there has to be a level of perspective that allows us to back up and say, wait a minute, what are we essentially here to do? Well, I am not here to turn my child into something that some sort of trophy of my sports prowess. They are to be a young man of strong character, leadership, with an ability to persevere through tough times, who learns to embrace hard work, who's not afraid to fail, who can admit their failures, who can walk through the different fires of life, and then also do it while managing relationships with a variety of people. And we won't do it right all the time, but we have to do a heart check consistently and see that we're doing it with the right intention, at least.
Yeah. And as we've said, it's, whatever it is you think that you want your young man to become, you have to model that behavior, and you can demand no less of yourself than what you would demand of them. So if you're going to demand that they be disciplined, then you better be disciplined. If you're going to demand that they have great body language, then you better have that. You better be that example to them. Again, that's living it from a walk perspective. It ain't easy. It ain't easy. But all Ed and I are recommending is don't choose the hard way every time. We didn't always learn from other people's failures, from the advice they gave us. We can't say that you will either, but we're going to put it out there. That's part of our mission here on Coach 'Em Up, is to try to help people do better than we have done, to find maybe not the easy way, Ed, but maybe not the hard way every single time.
Yeah, I mean, the hard way every time implies that you didn't learn from some of your previous mistakes and you kept having to do it the hard way. So yeah, let's
see these dents.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Banging against that wall.
It need not be the hard way. It'll the hardest way every time. It will still be difficult. It will still be challenging, but it need not be unnecessarily so.
And no greater responsibility, be it coaching or certainly parenting our children. My friend, we'll wrap it up for today. Another great episode. One thing I'll share with our audience, again, this is a pretty general, it's a huge topic, obviously. It's very, very broad. So our approach, pretty general in nature. If you've got any specific questions about this, coaching your kids, or if you've got other topics you'd love to see us add to our coaching resource here at Coach 'Em Up, drop those in the comments for us here on YouTube. And as we can, Ed and I will certainly be glad to address some of those things. My friend, thank you.
Yeah, we can pretend to be experts anytime anybody needs us to.
Hey, experts in failure, learning the hard way. We'll work from there. Guys, thanks for being with us. We'll see you next time here on Coach 'Em Up.